Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. We also go through fans' questions after the news segment, so if you like that, hopefully you stick around. This first news story is very, very sad. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins' Kendrick Norton injured in a car crash. Dolphins defensive tackle Kendrick Norton was involved in, quote, a serious car accident. According to an announcement from the Dolphins, the 22-year-old had his arm amputated at the scene of the crash. It's unlikely that Norton will ever play football again, though his life is not believed to be in danger. So this is very sad news. Obviously, he played college at Miami, and he obviously made it to the pros as a Dolphin. And obviously, all us Dolphins fans, our thoughts and prayers go out to the Norton family, and hopefully he gets well very soon. Very, very sad news. This next news story is an interesting one. It also comes from Pro Football Rumors. Josh Rosen, clear underdog in Dolphins quarterback competition. And this comes from Pro Football Rumors as well. One Dolphins player told Barry Jackson that Fitzpatrick has, quote, this is a Dolphins player that told Barry Jackson, who writes for the Miami Herald, this is what he said. He said, quote, he's impressed everyone as a leader, and he was clearly the best quarterback in the offseason program. That's pretty big, guys. That's pretty big. I mean, that is huge. There's another snippet I'm looking for right here. Many have accused the Dolphins of tanking, and they're definitely playing for their future. So it's been assumed that the team will want to get a look at Josh Rosen sooner or later, not so fast. Fitzpatrick has apparently been impressive throughout OTAs and minicamp, per Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. Additionally, Jackson writes that Rosen is, quote, a clear underdog to begin this season as the starter. So, sorry for the long pause there, and I apologize for the fan in the background as well. But this is a very interesting news story for a variety of different reasons, and I want to read that quote again because I want to just read that quote. It's very important. So one player told Barry Jackson, I went way too fast right there. A Dolphins player told Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald, quote, he's impressed everyone as a leader, and he was clearly the best quarterback in the offseason program. That's pretty big. I mean, this is something that we've talked about in the past shows, like my quick 2 cents on this, but this is something that we talked about in the past shows that, everywhere that Ryan Fitzpatrick, he has always been the favorite of the team. I mean, with the Buccaneers, he was the favorite of the team. With the Jets, he was the favorite of the team. Even though that they had young players that they would like to see if they could develop into something, and that's kind of why the locker room split, is because the organization wanted to see the young guy. The players wanted to play with Ryan, and that was something that I was really interested in going into this season, because Josh Rosen, not that he has a bad personality, but Ryan Fitzpatrick is clearly the more charismatic, the more relatable person than Rosen is to the other guys. Like, he's more of a guy's guy. You can tell that in interviews. He's a funny dude. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He plays with a passion for the game. And the guys love him. So that is going to be a hurdle that Josh is going to have to get over. He has to be the clear-cut better player for the players in the organization to rally behind him and be okay with him being the starting quarterback, because you guys have to remember the whole Brian Flores, Bill Belichick mantra and how they build their culture, same thing with Bill Parcells, is everything is based off of merit. It doesn't matter if you're Joe Montana. If someone is playing better than you, you are going to start no matter what. That is what they build their culture on. And they have very strict rules about that. It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, we've seen that with Bill Belichick in the past, how he's gotten rid of great players in the Patriots organization, just because it was either time to move on or there was a better, more unknown player behind him that he felt comfortable playing and who was a better player. So that is something that this is all going to be built upon. So if the locker room ever gets a sense of, let's say this tanking stuff is true, that Josh Rosen, that the organization wants to see what Josh Rosen could do, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is actually the better quarterback, but the organization wants to start Josh Rosen again. That completely, I think that's going to send the wrong message to the team, and that is something I have been worried about, but I don't think that is the goal of the organization. So my point is if Josh Rosen wants to win this, he's going to have to be the clear-cut better player. Not only for him to start, but for the locker room to accept it. That was my point with the whole Bill Belichick thing and the whole how they do things. You can't go back. You can't contradict yourself. So this is going to be very interesting. You know, people compare him to, in terms of personality, to like players like Aaron Rodgers and stuff like that. He's not, like I said, I already made my point with the differences between the two in terms of personality, but it's going to be really interesting how this plays out. I think Josh Rosen is not only fighting the fact that he has to be the better player, but he's also fighting the locker room as well. Because clearly, and this is not the first time we've read these reports that players prefer Ryan. This is so clearly he has to win over the locker room and the coaching staff to be the starting quarterback for the Dolphins week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. So I think it's a lot more complicated than just him being, him going. I mean, it's a very complicated situation. So it's very interesting that the locker room, at least it appears, prefers Fitzpatrick over Rosen. He's just an infectious kind of a guy. I mean, he's a great personality. I'm sure he'll be great on like ESPN one day, or he'll be a great commentator. But he's just a cool dude, and I could see that. And his play was so great throughout training camp and OTAs, or not training camp, mini camp and OTAs. It's gonna be really interesting to see how it shakes down. The point is, because I don't want to lose the point here, Rosen, not like I just said, but Rosen is not only going to have to be the better quarterback, but he's going to have to win over the locker room as well. So I feel like he's going to have to do even more than just barely beating him out. He's going to have to make a statement that, yeah, I am the better quarterback. And we'll see if he can do that throughout training camp. I'm still confident that he will be able to do that. The players only got a small sample size of Rosen. They got a way bigger sample size of Fitzpatrick. So it's going to be interesting to see when pads are on and stuff is flying all over the place and we're not in t-shirt and shorts, everything's all fun and, lollipops and rainbows, how things are going to shake out. Because I think it's going to be completely different. But so far, it seems the locker room prefers Fitzpatrick. And that comes from Barrett Jackson, who is obviously a beat writer for the team. This next news story comes from the Miami Herald, and coincidentally enough, Barry Jackson again. The title of the story: Why Ryan Fitzpatrick likes the role of Dan Marino in the quarterback room. So I felt like this is interesting because Dan, I don't think a lot of people know this, but Dan Marino does sit in on quarterback meetings with the team. One thing that Ryan Fitzpatrick has appreciated in his first 3 months as the Dolphins is a chance to share the quarterback room with special advisor Dan Marino, who regularly attends quarterback meetings. This is what Ryan had to say about Dan. He said, quote, "What a great guy. The biggest thing that pops out to me is his humility. Being able to bounce questions off of him has been great. He's been a great presence to have around, not only as a Hall of Fame quarterback, but just as a guy. Knowing some of the things we go through, whether it's off the field, with family, or on the field. He has great perspective on everything, and it's been great getting to know him." And that's the end of the quote from Ryan Fitzpatrick. So that's what Ryan Fitzpatrick had to say about Dan Marino sitting in on coaches' meetings, which I thought was very interesting. Because I don't think a lot of people know that, but Dan's been doing it for, 3 or 4 years now. It's nice to see Dan being involved with the team and the organization. You see players like John Elway, who is he's the decision maker for the Broncos. It would have been cool to see if Dan could have ever done that, because not that being a great player on the field always translates to being a great decision maker for an organization. We've seen that with Michael Jordan, with the Charlotte Hornets. So I don't know. It would have been cool to see. It's cool to see Dan in a role that contributes to the team winning. Is what I'm trying to say. It's very, very cool. 13 is still and always will be around the Dolphins, which is really cool. And again, if you guys want to watch some Dan Marino stuff, I think the NFL, I think it's either NFL Films or NFL Throwback is what it's called. They released Dan Marino's greatest moments throughout every single season he played. It's a great video if you haven't checked it out. This next news story comes from Dolphins Wire. Titans coach reiterates former Dolphins quarterback Ryan Tannehill is a backup. And this comes from Dolphins Wire. The Miami Dolphins cut their losses with quarterback Ryan Tannehill this offseason to some mixed reactions from the fan base, which I didn't think. I thought we were all on the same page. At least the fan base that is connected to this show, I think everybody was pretty happy that he had left. To some mixed reactions from the fan base, many felt, as the Dolphins apparently did, that Tannehill had reached his peak and as a player, and the Dolphins needed an upgrade to take the next step as an organization. And yet a vocal minority of the fan base contested that Tannehill never got a fair shake in Miami. Too much turmoil and not enough stability, subpar players around him. It seems the Tennessee Titans haven't bought that narrative themselves. The Titans traded for Tannehill earlier this offseason with the intention that he would be the backup to Tennessee's own flawed but gifted quarterback Marcus Mariota. And the Titans head coach Mike Vrabel recently reiterated that the pecking order in Tennessee features Mariota atop the food chain during an interview for United States Press International. Never heard of that before. This is what Mike Vrabel had to say about Ryan Tannehill. He said, quote, Tannehill's job as a backup, everybody's job as a backup is to push the guy in front of him, to compete and try to make yourself better and try to make the team better, and everybody else responds. So I felt like this is an interesting news story just because, it's interesting to see what Ryan is going to do in Tennessee as a Dolphins fan. If you like him or not, I feel like it does give him a chance to prove the people wrong and to prove some people right when it comes to Ryan Tannehill. Now, just a quick thing to say. Just so you know my opinion on Ryan Tannehill, if you haven't been a long-time listener, I've always been a big fan of Tannehill until really the last few games of the season, and I recently went back and watched all of the steps he took at the end of the year when he came off his shoulder injury from the Cincinnati Bengals game. One of the things that I noticed right away is the pass protection was so bad, it's unreal. But the other thing I noticed is he made a lot of bad decisions, especially in the Bills game and the Jaguars game when the game was still close. And that really, the decisions he made in those games really either opened the floodgates to a huge loss or we lost the tight game because of those decisions he made. And after those two games, I was like, okay, it's time to move on. Tannehill really just can't make plays off script. He cannot carry a team. He cannot carry a bad offensive line. It's very rare that you find a player that can do that, and that's pretty much what sold me on the fact that we got to go out there and try to figure out if we can find someone who's capable of doing that. And I think for both parties involved, for Tannehill and us as fans of the organization, that it was just time to just try something else. I feel like it was just time to try something else. And it's going to be interesting to see, and why it relates to this story, and the article did a good job of pointing this out. There are still people that feel like he didn't get a fair enough shake in Miami. If you surround him with talent, how well can he play? And clearly, especially the last few games of the year last year, the offensive line was in shambles. It was terrible. And even for Brock Osweiler as well. Like, I gave Brock a really hard time in some of those games, which he deserved, trust me, because I just rewatched it because he missed a lot of throws. But he also was playing behind a terrible, terrible offensive line, and so was Tannehill. Like, the protection, it was really just in the interior. There was no running game. There was nothing. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's going to be interesting to see if Tannehill if Marcus ever got hurt, he's playing behind a pretty good offensive line. He's got 2 good tackles. The interior is much better. His backfield is very good. The defense is very good in Tennessee in terms of talent. I feel like it's going to be very interesting just to see how he does and can he prove the point of some of the, and again, the article did a good job of I guess it would be the minority. I don't know if it is, but the minority of Dolphins fans that said he would be a better player if we could put a team around him. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. I was about to go on a rant about how Peyton Manning never really had, like, it doesn't matter, but we're going to move on because I don't want to get, all jumbled up here. I would like for you guys in the comment section below what are your thoughts? Do you think Tannehill will win the starting job eventually? Because Marcus has never had a healthy season. Or do you think he is what he is? Doesn't matter. You just think that's what Tannehill is. It's going to be very interesting to see what the fan base thinks. Or I'm rather probably would better way to say that is, do you think he can beat out Marcus Mariota and keep the job if he ever did get the opportunity to start? Because I think he will. I really do. I still believe that. And I know that's a controversial thing to say, I guess, but I still do believe that he's a talented player. And I feel like with the right, and I just said before, I gave him criticisms why it just wouldn't work here, but it will be interesting to see how all that shakes out. Anyway, let's move on to the next news story. And this also comes from Dolphins Wire. 4 former Dolphins included on ESPN's 2019 All-Retirement Team. So I figured it'd be cool to go through those four players. Let's see here. The folks over at ESPN have released their 4th annual All-Retirement Team. And while there may not have been any big retirement losses by 2018 Dolphins, several former Dolphins did make the list as notable players to hang up the cleats. The only player on the list who ended the 2018 season with the Dolphins is interior offensive lineman Travis Swanson, who was marked as a reserve on ESPN's list. The 3 other former Dolphins were recognized, including one other defender who played some snaps for Miami in 2018, linebacker Montrell Spate. The highlight of the group is cornerback Vontae Davis, and Alteron Werner as well made the list. So I guess that's interesting. I think the only player of note on that list, I actually thought that list would be way more interesting than it was. Didn't Josh Sitton retire? He should be on that list. Who barely played with us. Did he play a game with us, or did he make it? I don't even think he made it out of the Titans game. He played a few snaps with us. He's a great player, but the point is Vontae Davis is probably the most notable one on there. He's made some crazy interceptions, especially in his career as a Dolphin. I think it was the one on Brett Favre. I know it was against the Vikings. I don't know if Brett was still playing though. This next news story also comes from Dolphins Wire. Which non-quarterback would you choose to come back to play for the Dolphins for the 2019 season from Dolphins history? So this is very interesting, and I'm sure down in the comment section below you guys will have your own, but I thought about that. You cannot pick Dan Marino, so this is interesting. When you look at the team, and listen, you can bring back so many great players, but I feel like you have to look at the team needs, okay? Like, you could bring back Larry Zonka, but I feel like Kenyon Drake, I'm not saying he's better than a Hall of Fame running back who won 2 Super Bowls for the franchise. I'm just saying I feel like we should bring back someone, and this is how I'm doing it. Not necessarily the best Dolphins player other than Dan Marino, but just like someone who can come in and fill a hole. So that's what I'm basing this off of. So don't freak out if I don't pick Larry Zonka or I don't know. I was going to say another player, but I actually might pick him. So it really came down, for me anyway, it came down, because we could go Jason Taylor, and I didn't even think about that. The 2 names that came to my mind immediately was Larry Little and Richmond Webb. Those are the two names that came to me immediately, because obviously the offensive line needs help. Now, the reason I probably would lean towards Larry Little is because he's a physical player presence. He's a great puller. And how would I know that? Because I have literally watched both Super Bowl championships from the Dolphins. You can watch them on NFL something. Maybe NFL Throwback. They have the full game. They have like every Super Bowl that you can go watch on YouTube. And I watched both of those games. Multiple times, actually. I've watched the Redskins Super Bowl probably twice. Okay, so Larry's a great puller. And he's a physical run blocker. He's obviously a Hall of Fame guard. So I probably would put him, and you could probably go Dwight Stevens here too. It really doesn't matter. Dwight Stevenson. And Bob Kuechenberg too. He's pretty good. But I'm going to go with either Larry Little, Richmond Webb, and then I just thought of Jason Taylor, who obviously would bring one of the best pass rushers of all time to that defense. So it's really preference here. This is really hard because, and the reason I thought about Richmond Webb is there's a hole at right tackle, and obviously he could fill that hole. So, this is a tough one, man. I would have to say pass rusher is so hard, and for someone to be on the top 5 sack list like Jason is so ridiculous. He's a part of only 4 other guys that have done the same or have had the same level of production as him. So I'm gonna go with Jason Taylor, and I'm bringing back Defensive Player of the Year Jason Taylor. So for this season, and it's hard because I really want to go offensive line, but we have no edge rusher right now. And not only is Jason Taylor an edge rusher, he's just an all-around great defender, and he's super versatile. I mean, the man's had so many defensive touchdowns in his career. He is a difference maker. He's a Defensive Player of the Year, former Defensive Player of the Year, one of the greatest pass rushers of all time. Not just the greatest Dolphin of all time, but one of the greatest pass rushers of all time. So I'm gonna go with Jason Taylor. And I didn't even think about him until just now, because I was set on Larry Little or Richmond Webb. But I ended up going, I'm going to go with Jason Taylor. Just because of the need. And really, out of all of those guys, I think those are the fun. Like, I'm interested to see what you guys pick, who you guys pick. Because I do think it comes down to offensive line and defensive line. I mean, we've had so many great offensive linemen over the years. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys go with there. And that's it for the news, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously we had the super sad story at the beginning, very unfortunate. So I probably shouldn't say we've had more news than usual because it's not actually good news. So yeah, let's get into the Q&A where fans ask questions, and obviously it's literally in the name. Literally in the name. I don't know why I'm saying that. So if you guys want to participate in that, you can. You just gotta subscribe. This first news story comes from... news story, dude. News story. I'm tired, guys. It's just... my brain is scrambled right now. This first question comes from Gamerific. Gamerific asks, Michael Dieter is a 65 overall in Madden 20. Do you agree? He's a 3rd round pick and just got signed. Does EA hate the Miami Dolphins? EA needs to make a good football game, okay? And before they, don't take this overall thing very seriously. No, I do not think he's a 65 overall. He's a 3rd round pick. He should at least be like a 70 to a 74 or 75 overall. So a 65 overall, yeah, that's... And Michael Dieter's a good player, too. He's not a bad player. So, yeah, I completely disagree. I also just don't like the product that they make in general. But, they need to get it together over there. Not only are they getting overalls wrong, but their game sucks. This next question comes from T-Zone. He asks, Skaggs, I think this season is the one Laremy Tunsil will prove he deserves a huge payday. Thoughts? Last season was. He had a great season. I think he only let up 2 sacks all year. He was the best left tackle in football. Adam Gase said it many times. I know everybody's not a big fan of Adam Gase, but he made a huge case when he didn't make the Pro Bowl why he should have made the Pro Bowl. He had the best performance. He didn't let up. I think the first sack he let up was against Yannick Ngakoue against the Jaguars, and it wasn't even his fault. He's one of the best. He is the best. He's not the best all-around left tackle just because he needs to be better in the running game, even though he's not bad at all. But he's the best pass-blocking tackle in the National Football League. I don't even think it's close. I mean left tackle. I probably should say left tackle. In my opinion, he is. And, not even only Adam Gase, but people like Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network was talking about how he deserved at least a Pro Bowl spot. I feel like Laramie had proved he has to be consistent about it, but I feel like he proved last year that he is good enough to be at one of the highest paid tackles in football. If that answers your question, T-Zone. This next question, and basically my answer is I think he's already proved that he deserves it. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, Skaggs, it's early, but who is third on the running back depth chart? Mark Walton and Myles Gaskin between the two, obviously. Very long pause right there. I'm gonna go with Myles because he's a versatile back. He's a very versatile back. I feel like he will make the team just because of that, because he can do a lot of different things. I feel like he can do those. I think he's a better receiving back than Mark Walton. So I feel like that will probably be the deciding factor. So I'm gonna go with Myles Gaskin. He'll be third on the chart. This next question comes from, let me get caught, I can't see that. Tree _001. He asks, have you tried mindfulness meditation? I recommend the Sam Harris Waking Up app. If at all interested, highly recommended. Keep up the good work. Big fan. I really appreciate that, Tree. No, I've heard of this actually from the Joe Rogan podcast, but that's literally all I guess. I can't even remember the context of what that conversation was about or why that this helps people. But I do remember them talking about that on the podcast. I might, I'll have to check it out, I guess. This next question comes from SM, and I don't know why I said I guess. That sounds like it's like I'm definitely I'll look into it. And I really appreciate it. Anytime anybody gives me a compliment, it means a lot. And I really appreciate that. This next question comes from SM. He says, what do you make of players like Carew? Let me restart that. I feel like I went way too fast. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, what do you make of players like Carew and Brock Osweiler? Deontay Carew and Brock Osweiler. That none of the other teams have even brought them back for a workout. Well, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. We probably should have tried Deontay Carew at tight end. I really do believe that. He weighed a lot. I know he's not a big guy, but he was always a big dude in terms of weight. He's a physical receiver. It would have been interesting to see if we could have tried it. He had great hands. He was a great 50-50 guy at Rutgers, but he just never panned out. But obviously, the reason Brock Osweiler isn't getting signed, the man is literally the poster child for captain check-down quarterbacks. Like, he literally, I can't even go, he is such a bad, I'm so baffled right now, I can't even find the words. Basically, he doesn't read the field very well, in my opinion. Like, he doesn't get off his first read fast enough, and he's just captain check down, and he doesn't, I don't know, his deep arm, obviously, for someone who's 6'7", you would think you would have a better arm, but I don't know, Brock Osweiler is not a very good player. That's why, he didn't get a workout. And as for Deontay Carew, I don't know, he was a talented player coming out of college. It sucks it never panned out. This next question comes from Wayne Tillman. Wayne Tillman asks, with the sudden tragic events involving Kendrick Norton, do we now focus immediately on defensive end / outside linebacker to fill the void, or just try to wing it with what we have now? I mean, we're probably just going to have to wing it with what we have now. There's really nothing we can do. Obviously, Kendrick was a defensive tackle. I don't know where the Dolphins are planning on playing him, but that's what he played most of his life. And I would have assumed he would have done that again, or played maybe a 3-4 defensive end. So it's, I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like we have a lot of depth at DT, so that's not an issue. But it's going to be tough, man. I mean, there's not a clear cut player on the edge, like, at all, and it's going to be interesting to see who can. Obviously, the loss of Kendrick, we do lose some depth, and he was an interesting young player. He was very young, and I think it was 7th or 6th round pick to stay in the league, still be in the league. Obviously, he has shown potential, so it's a tough loss. But I mean, it really, there's no one really there anyway. You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting to see who steps up. It's going to be very interesting. This next question comes from Ron. He says, who do you see specifically playing nose tackle when we bounce to a 3-4? That's an interesting question. I could see Christian Wilkins doing it, and I could see Wilkins doing it. I could see Devon's not the biggest guy in the world. He's more of a 4-3 guy, but I could see Wilkins doing it and Vincent Taylor doing it at a pretty good level. And the guy that we got from Brazil, it's going to be interesting to see if he develops into something, but he obviously can do it. He's literally just a big nose tackle is the best way I can describe him. So I would see between those three, if I had to guess, I would say Vincent Taylor. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, what sources do you use to scout, evaluate players, or do you rely on just what you see and watch? If you do use sources, can you tell us which ones? I just go off of just, in terms of Dolphin stuff, it's just watching the games throughout the regular season, watching preseason games, rewatching those games after the season's over, on YouTube of the best you can possibly get. If you look hard enough, you can find anything on YouTube. But in terms of college players, it really seems that copyright infringement isn't very big in terms of college football games because you can find anything. You can find a drop, every snap a player is taken, every drop a player is taken, and it's all cutting together. It's harder to find coaches' film, obviously, unless you have, I think, NFL Game Pass. But what if it's not a Dolphins player, then and it's like, let's say, someone who's coming in college that I want to watch. Like, I watched a lot of quarterbacks. All of the stuff that I watched was on YouTube. It was basically every single game that they played, every drop back that they had. For Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, what's his name? God, I'm forgetting his name. I mean, obviously, I don't know why I'm forgetting his name. The quarterback from Ohio State, what's his name? I don't know why I'm forgetting his name. You guys know what I'm talking about. Who else am I forgetting? I'm forgetting someone. Oh, I watched Ryan Finley, too. Like, I watched, the Stidham guy from Auburn, who was drafted by the Patriots. Yeah, so that's what I usually do if I'm looking for, like, a player that's in college and that's coming up in the draft. And same thing for defensive players and stuff like that, and offensive players too. I watched a lot of Michael Dieter and Senior Bowl stuff. You can find all of that on YouTube. So that's what I use for that. And if it's Dolphins related, it just comes from basically how you guys consume it. Really, is just watching the games and then rewatching them on YouTube. If you want a good, let me get you the exact channel. This guy documented every snap our quarterbacks took last year and over the last, I think, 3 years. His name is David Bradford. If you have not, literally that's the YouTube name, David Bradford. He did every snap for all of the quarterbacks last year, over the last 3 years. So if you want to go watch that, you can. So that's basically how I do it, Ron. This next question comes from Douglas. Douglas Ward asks, hey Skaggs, would it be okay, excuse me. Restart that. This next question comes from Douglas. Douglas asks, hey Skaggs, would it surprise you if Ryan Tannehill ends up taking over the Titans' starting quarterback job due to another injury to Marcus Mariota and leads Tennessee to the playoffs and a postseason victory? I don't know about the whole... I mean, his division is very tough. The AFC South is very, very, very tough. I mean, you talk about the Jaguars, who I feel like are worse than they were when they made the AFC Championship game. They've lost a lot of players that were contributors to that team. You think about Dante Fowler. Who else did they lose? They lost a couple other players too. But so I feel like they're a little overrated. But when you talk about the Colts, who I think are the best team in the division, I think the Texans are probably second. I would say the Titans are third, and I would say the Jaguars are fourth. It would be tough to make the playoffs in that division. But I could see Tannehill winning the starting job, for sure. I could see that. He's a very talented player. I feel like he gets a bad rap. And like I said, I just rewatched literally the same thing. I was on David Bradford's YouTube channel and just watching all of the snaps again and again and again. And one thing that you will, if you do that, if you go back and watch, the one thing you will immediately realize is how bad the offensive line is. And just watch the interior, and you'll realize how bad it was. So I think Tannehill, well, his team is talented, and they're a physical run-first team. They try not to make a lot of mistakes, and I feel like Tannehill fits that kind of a formula perfectly. So yeah, I could see him doing that. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, do you think our Dolphins' run defense is going to improve? And if so, how much of an improvement? I think it's going to improve immensely. I feel like we're going to be anywhere from 18 to 15, somewhere in there, if I had to predict it. If it's a dramatic jump, then it'll be 15 to 14 to 13, maybe, somewhere in there. But in terms of defensive rankings, the reason we're going to be better at run defense is because of the scheme is a lot better. The 3-4 defense, and if you look at the stats over the years, 3-4 defenses, in terms of scheme, are always better than 4-3. I don't really know why, to be honest with you. Maybe because you have more athleticism on the field. I really don't know. But, so I think that's a factor. And I think the physical nature of the New England defense and how they preach that and how they preach technique and just being a physical defense, fill your gap, don't do your job, all that stuff. I feel like I'm having a brain fart, excuse me. That will also contribute to us being a better run defense. You know, one of the things that you see all the time, and former players talk about this all the time, is to be a great run defense team, it takes the team. It doesn't matter how many talented players you have. It's everybody being on the same page. And you hear that over and over again with NFL teams. And I feel like a lot of that comes from coaching. So if what I think is true and Brian Flores is a stickler for that kind of stuff, then we should improve. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, which Dolphins newcomers are going to make an impact? Newcomers. I think Dwayne Allen is going to make a big impact in the run game. I feel like Wilkins he'll make a great impact, obviously. I feel like he's going to be a very good player for us. We're going to move around the defense a lot. We might even see him play a little bit of fullback in the goal line situations. I feel like Eric Rowe will be better than people think. So yeah, those are some of the players that I probably would say. And Chandler Cox too. I feel like he's going to be a fan favorite. Chandler Cox, I've said this a million times, but he reminds me a lot of Kyle Juszczyk. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, do you have any players on other teams that you would pick up if they got released? If so, who you cut on the Dolphins to make room? Who would you cut? He wrote it, who you cut on the Dolphins to make room. I don't know why I've said that. It's not to bag on you, SM, because you're fine. I mean, you're fine. Who would I cut? Man. I mean, if I had, we don't really have to make room, but I guess if Oh man, I don't know. That's such a broad question. I mean, there's so many possibilities with that. I don't know, because I mean, if you're playing, I guess if it's like I'll cut anybody on anybody else's team, I would say I would cut. And maybe that was your question. I'm just being stupid right now, but I thought you meant like players that might be cut. But I think that's what you meant, like just players that you want to cut. I would cut David DeCastro from the Steelers, and I would cut on the Dolphins. I would cut Jordan Mills and put Jesse Davis at right tackle, and then put David DeCastro in the interior. If that answers your question, David DeCastro, one of the best players in the league. It was a great question, SM. This next question comes from Tree. He says, big Dolphins fan and fan of your show. You have the best Dolphins content on YouTube. Keep up the good work. Do you take drugs? What are your thoughts on drugs? What are your thoughts on NFL players taking drugs? Marijuana seems to be popular in the NFL. Do you smoke pot or know anyone who does? What Dolphins players, past or present, took drugs aside from Ricky Williams? I don't know who. I can't remember. I mean, I think Sean Smith got in trouble. Maybe it was Vontae Davis, but I think they got in trouble one time. But no, I mean, to answer your question, first of all, thank you for the compliment. That's awesome. And hopefully I can continue to bring you the good content. And secondly, do you take drugs? I do not. What are your thoughts on drugs? I don't know if I want to say. I'll say it when it, not just of society, but I'll say it when it, how, in relation to the NFL, and we'll focus on marijuana. I feel like marijuana should be legal. I don't think it hurts anybody. I don't think it's I mean, anything that you do too much of can hurt you and hurt your lifestyle. So I feel like weed is just another one of those substances that can do that. But I don't think, I really don't, someone's going to have to come to me and tell me why that it is banned from being used in the NFL, because I don't see a real reason why. I feel like Chris Sims, he does a great podcast on NBC. I think it's called the Chris Sims podcast. He did a very good job of articulating why it's important for NFL players to have it. It reduces pain, inflammation, and stuff like that, is what he said. I don't know if that's completely true, because I'm a dumb person. Don't take anything I say seriously unless it's a Dolphins topic, because I feel like I think I at least know a little bit what I'm talking about when it comes to the Dolphins. But yeah, so I feel like I just don't understand why it's not. I know that it's illegal in a lot of different states, but I don't know if there's a way to work around that, because you're your own company, you're your organization. If you don't, I mean, obviously the NBA doesn't do anything about it. You can, if you're the NFL, I don't know how you would handle it, but you probably would be like, listen, we're going to say you can't do it. And if that, and I don't know what the NBA's policy on it is, but if you're the NFL, maybe just be like, okay, we're not going to really, we're going to look the other way when it comes to marijuana. And I feel like no one is going to care about that. And if you do, I would love to know why. Because it really, there's nothing wrong with it. And I don't understand why the NFL isn't as lax as the MLB and the NFL, or the MLB and the NBA. I don't understand what the issue is. You know, Chris Long, and I don't want to stay on this topic for too long, but Chris Long came out and said that, yeah, there's a way to beat the system, and he smoked weed all the time. Same thing with Chris Sims. He said he did it all the time, and he was obviously a quarterback for a long time in the NFL. So I feel like it probably is being, I don't remember the last player who got for it. I feel like Josh Gordon and like, who else was, Martavis Bryant, I guess it is. I don't know if that's the everything, I don't know, but yeah, I feel like it should not be a big deal, and players should not be suspended for it. This next question comes from SM asks, Skaggs, you are the GM, it's the mid-season trade deadline, the Fids are 3-5, Your phone rings. This is a great question so far. I'm giving you an imaginary high five, SM. Your phone rings, and it's an offer for Xavier Howard, who has 6 picks, 6 interceptions. At this point, they say to you, name your price. What do you do? We're oh my god. Oh my god. I'm 3-5. Name my price, and I get anything I want. And I don't know who's calling me. I mean, I don't know if I get anything I want. I don't know what rules we're playing by, because that would change my answer. But if we're playing, let's do this. We're playing by real NFL rules, like how the NFL works. If that's the case, then I'm not getting anything better than a first-round pick. So I'm gonna hang up the phone, because I think Xavier Howard, he's so young, and he's only gonna get better. And if he had 6 picks and we're 3-5, then yeah, I'm hanging the phone up. I'd be like, this man just had a great year last year. He was a first-team All-Pro. He's continuing that. He's being consistent. He's obviously worth the contract. Yeah, I'm hanging the phone up. That's a great question. That is a great question. This next question comes from SM. He asks, Dan Marino is a special consultant for the Dolphins. He's been sitting in on the quarterback meetings. Is this a big deal or not? It's a big deal if you're a Dolphins fan, but it doesn't affect how... It doesn't matter. Obviously, when... I don't know how to compare. I don't know if there's ever been a player, I guess maybe Eric Dickerson, who probably shouldn't have said something. I mean, been as involved, even though he was right, with what the team decision-making is. But, I mean, Dan is obviously a presence that is welcomed in the Dolphins organization, and you hear that from the players. So, I don't know, it's a big deal because it's not because it's a bad thing, but because it's a good thing. And I'm very, very happy that he's still around the team. This next question comes from JR. JR asks, do you think our coaching staff is better than last year? If coaching is a big upgrade, shouldn't we be better? We didn't lose any talent except Old Wake, Gore, and Tannehill. I hate saying Tanny. I hate that. Gained a few good young players. Do you think... Yes, I do. And I think obviously experience, the pedigree of a lot of the coaches was better than a lot of the people in the past. They've all been in high power and big decision-making positions, and they've all done a very good job. So, yeah. I feel like, you would think, yes, the team would be better. I'm hopeful that it will be. I feel like the team is better a lot. And Cameron Wake is a big loss because he was the edge rusher, even though he wasn't as good against the run. And we obviously lost Robert Quinn as well, which is a bigger loss than... Yeah, he's a good pass rusher, but he's not a good all-around player. So we definitely lost a lot, and we lost Juwan James as well, who was a very good right tackle, especially in the passing game. But so I think we did lose a little bit more than nothing, a lot more actually than nothing. But, and I've said this a million times, if the offensive line, because the coaches can't fix trash. I mean, if it's trash, it's trash. There's nothing you really can do about it. If the offensive line is better, which I think it has potential to be, depending on what lineup plays, and if we can find a pass rusher, then we will have I think a good season. This next question comes from Kevin. Kevin asks, or Kevin says, I shouldn't say asks. He says, hey man, new listener here. Excited to continue listening moving forward. Thank you. That means a lot. He says, I have a big question. And hopefully I can keep you listening. But let me continue in the question. He says, I have a big question. An obvious area of the team is in the O-line. Is the question about the O-line. Many experts as well as yourself have said this unit's success will make or break the offense this year. Personally, I disagree. Hear me out. And please provide your opinion on this. The O-line is generally defined as guards, tackles, center. In the offseason, we've added 3 or 4 tight ends. Primarily guys who are known for blocking ability. Additionally, I think 3 current tight ends on our roster, as of now, have experience playing fullback. And counting out draft selection of fullback Chandler Cox, in my eyes, the support that that will be provided by the 2 tight end sets and the addition of a fullback will increase the offense's efficiency immensely, as well as resulting in a plethora of big plays from guys like Drake, Balaj, who are dual threats, and Kenny Stills on play action deep balls against a defense duped into thinking we are going to run the ball. Obviously, we need to improve the line in due time, but I think the approach to personnel packages is not quite the issue everyone makes it out to be. What say you? That's a great way of that is a great way of articulating that, and that's a great you make a great point. I agree with you, but there will always come a time when you have to be in the shotgun, whether that's third down, and obviously on third down in 5s or 6 or 7s, you're gonna have to be in the shotgun. That's where that comes into play. Is pass protection is so important to third downs. Now, if you keep extra people on the block, that means less people are going to go out to attack the defense. So that always is a factor. If you have a great offensive line, that allows you to attack the defense at a higher level. Because you don't have to keep extra people on the block. You can have more playmakers on the field. You can go empty set a lot of the time, which is a great set. You see the Steelers doing it a lot because they have a great offensive line. The Cowboys do it a lot as well. The Packers used to do it a lot, but they don't as much. But if you have a better offensive line, that allows you to do more on the offensive side of the ball. You're right. If you're a great 2 tight end set team, you're under center a lot, you're running the ball at a successful rate, then a lot of that is nullified because you're in way more favorable down and distances. You're not as reliant on the passing game. You're absolutely right about that. But your third down efficiency will not be as good if you have a bad offensive line, and our drives will suffer from that. So that is why it's important to have a great offensive line. And if you want to come back in a game, all of that kind of stuff is very, very important. It's also very important for the development of a young quarterback, because now, hopefully Josh Rosen is over this at this point, but they take a little bit longer to make decisions. They're not as quick as some of the veterans in the league. Sometimes they don't know what they're seeing. So an offensive line can give them extra protection and extra time to make that decision. And obviously they take less hits, and that's obviously a great thing. If you're a veteran or a young quarterback, you take way less hits. And that always slows down. You don't always feel like, I got to get the ball out of my hands, I got to make a play when the pass rusher is coming at you, and that interceptions go down when you have confidence in your offensive line as well. So all of those are factors in to team success, and that is why you have to have a good offensive line. But you're absolutely right. You just can't stay in those sets forever. That's the problem. Unless your defense is really, really good. If it's like a top 5 defense, then you can probably do that. But you can't if you're not. You just can't. There's gonna have to be a time where you have to either come back in a game, or it's third down and you need it. And that's where the offensive line comes in. But I agree with you. Like, you can protect a bad offensive line to a certain extent. But you have to have a special defense to do that, and to win a lot of games and to make the playoffs to do that. A lot of people forget, in the 2016 team was the last time we had a really good offensive line. That would, obviously they coined the term, or the team nickname, as fans did, the Unicorns, because they barely played with each other because they were always hurt. But when they did, we were a very, very good football team on offense. We could run the ball, we could pass the ball. But you do make a lot of really good points. You'd make a lot of great points, Kevin, because it will help the play action game a lot. It will help us to take more deep shots down the field. But you also have to have a great and the other thing I will say before we get off the topic is the guards have to be better in the running game. They've been abysmal in the running game over the last few years. Now, the thing that I think is going to help them is the scheme is going to change. It's going to be a lot less shotgun runs, a lot less. It's going to be more power based, which I feel like will help the running game as well. For the like you said, we added those tight ends. We added Chandler Cox. I feel like all of those things are going to help the running game. So you're right. You're right with what you said, but the reasons that I brought up are the reason why we have to have a better offensive line, especially in the interior. Like I said, I just rewatched the last few games of the year, and the interior offensive line was god awful, like really, really bad. So we have to do a better job in that department, and and again, third down has been an issue for this team. Blitz pickup has been an issue with the team, and I think a lot of that comes down to bad quarterback play. That was another thing that I noticed. Our blitz pickup game was terrible. But we have to have a good offensive line to be better on third down, and that's something that this team has done, not been very good at over the last few years. This is a great question, though, Kevin. Very, very good question. This last question comes from Ron. Ron asks, people keep saying how great our coaching staff is, yet nobody knows what scheme they're going to use. They have not seen one game yet. Why do fans always do this to themselves? I heard in Gase we trust for 3 years, and I was the bad guy for saying, let's see what we can do 3 or 4 years, and he got fired. With everyone bad-mouthing him, including the truthers who chanted in Gase we trust. So my question is, without seeing how they use this roster, what are your people wanting to join the cult of Flores? I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent. I mean, I feel like the people that hate on Adam are ridiculous sometimes, because he literally, his first year as a coach, went 10-6, and we made the playoffs. If it wasn't for him, we would have gone over a decade without making the playoffs. And that team was not good. That roster was not good, especially on defense. It was not good. That was historically the worst offense defense in the franchise's history in 2016, yet we still made the playoffs because our offense was good. We had one of the better running games in the league at the time. And it didn't really start showing up until towards the end of the season when we needed it to, and that's somewhere we struggled in December. And we had a really, really good core of young players. Our coach proved that he could win in this league. That's why we were all, at least me, I was just so excited for the future. The excuse in 2017 was Tannehill tore his ACL. That was the excuse. And Jay Cutler came in and did a terrible job. Nobody liked him on the team. The locker room hated him. His play on the field was terrible. The defense was bad. It was very inconsistent. So a lot of people blamed it on Tannehill, because Tannehill just had a career year in 2016. And it wasn't the beginning of 2016, it was the end of 2016, or the mid of 2016, why everybody believed in him. So this whole notion that Adam Gase's love was based off of nothing is ridiculous, because that's not true. He did go to the playoffs his first season as the Dolphins coach. I just want to make that clear. It wasn't like everybody loved him for no reason. Now, you make a great point. Why do fans need now to jump on the Brian Flores bandwagon without seeing anything? And I agree with you, they shouldn't. But it's the pedigree that he surrounded himself with that is so impressive. You think about some of the guys that we signed, Reggie McKenzie. Now, Reggie, it was really, and in Reggie's defense, Mark Davis seemed to be a little bit more involved than he needed to be. But, so I'm going to give him a pass on that, because when he was with the Packers, they did a great job. But, Reggie McKenzie, who's had a lot of success in this league. Jim Caldwell, one of the more underrated coaches in NFL history, really. I mean, he's always done a good job of wherever he's gone. And whether it's, helping the Ravens win the Super Bowl in 2012 when he was the offensive coordinator, that was the best ball Joe Flacco ever played. He's had a great career. He's here. Chad O'Shea, who had a tremendous career in New England of developing talent. There's a lot of people surrounding Brian that I trust to do the job right. And when it comes to Brian, the thing that I love about him the most is he reminds me of what owners used to look for in coaches back in the day, and that's leadership. And that's not really what owners look for now. They look for the young wonderkind who's a great offensive mind. They don't look for who can lead a team at a high level, and that used to be what you looked for back in the day. And it was I don't know, maybe 5 to 8 years ago. That's what you look for, and a lot of the best coaches are that in the league. I mean, Bill is a great just football mind, but he's also everybody that's played for him. He's a great leader, and he sets the tone for that organization. Harbaugh, both of them, especially John, I think, or Jim. I can't get those. I think it's John in Baltimore. Sean Payton. Even though he's a great offensive mind, but there's a lot of, in NFL history, it's even better, but, which we won't get into, but that's why I feel like I have faith in Brian, is because he is that kind of, his way of coaching has been successful throughout NFL history, so I feel like that is why it gives me confidence in Brian Flores. So that's probably why you should hitch your wagon to his truck. I don't know how that analogy goes. A little earlier than you probably should, but I agree with you, Ron. You should be skeptical because you've been burned how many times now. So I agree with you and I disagree with you at the same time. So that is going to be it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. And thank you guys for the compliments. It was really nice. It was really nice. And thank you to everyone who asked questions. You guys did a really good job with these questions in this episode.